Hello, my loves. How are you? Today we are going to talk about divine masculine's experience with abstinence. And any of you who have been here with me, the masculines made it very clear that they wanted to call it abstinence versus celibacy. And this is part of this process of understanding more deeply and having compassion for divine masculine's experience is the intention of this video. There's been a lot of questions around wondering why divine feminine goes through such an intense experience of celibacy. And then it seems like divine masculine is in the opposite energies of being very sexually active and engaged in the physical world. And the masculines wanted me to come through and bring some awareness around this energy and why. One, we know it's part of the mirror for the feminines, but in this deeper level of initiating understanding, they wanted me to talk about why they actually may be avoiding being abstinent or going celibate for a time, or why they actually work to avoid this, but then it eventually ends up happening. But those initial energies of the avoidance of this process of abstaining are very deeply based in a protective mechanism, and parts of that come from just being taught that it's the right thing to engage in sexual energies. And also, in a lot of times, like moving from sexual partner to sexual partner or multiple partners or engaging, like we talked about in porn, or just always having some form of sexual activity with another available or something outside of themselves available is actually in part in the unhealed states, part of a distraction away from the deeper energies of the misuse and use and abuse of sexual energies connected with the masculines. And it could be partly in their own shame and guilt around their sexual energies and not fully understanding them or the power of them, or the things that are seen to be as shameful or not normal or shouldn't be experienced or expressed, that may become a suppressed energy within their system, or if they experienced any form of abuse at the hands of another. And there is a lot of deeper shame associated with that for masculines. And oftentimes, many masculines have been a target for those energies because they are so deeply shamed around speaking out around this, whether it's being abused from a feminine or another masculine. And these very intense and vulnerable topics can be part of why this subject took me a little bit to address with you in this way, because a lot of times the sexual activity is being used as a distraction away from the deeper um, states of trauma that may live in divine masculine system. Okay. Obviously, we can see this in humans in general, but the masculines really wanted me to bring this through to shed light of compassion on some of why this is used as a defense mechanism. Now, I want to also couple this with the fact that healthy states of intimacy and sexuality with another for the masculine is also his natural nature. So that is also intertwined within that, being in his state of giving. And like we talked about in the conversation with Connor, it is just part of his natural creator abilities as a man. And so that innate natural nature to be sexual is also very much present in his system, which accounts for that drive forward in that way. But to go deeper into this, as divine masculine is on his journey. And as, say, divine feminine has gone through her states of celibacy, she may still be in that, and she's finding her sense of stability and safety within herself, really getting grounded. And this is sort of the time when divine masculine is triggered into deeper states of his transformation or dark night of the soul, because he was holding a stable space while she was going through her process. And now he's being catapulted into his. Eventually, he does experience a time where that sexual connection with another or others or other things really does diminish. And it can be different for each person, of course, but there does come a time of that diminishing energy going into a state of abstinence and self reflection. And within this process, it's multiple things going on, and mostly just because the masculines are so much more physically oriented. What's happening oftentimes is that the ways that they were engaging or used to engage or that used to be satisfying are no longer fulfilling for them, and also no longer satisfying the distraction in the way that it was distracting. So if they're meant to be on this awakening ascension journey, if that is their contract and they have a counterpart to connect with and work with on this journey, or just their own personal contract, soul contract with source to step into their sacred masculine essences as a conscious creator on this planet, they will find along their journey that they do go through these states of abstinence. And it's avoided because of these suppressed and frozen energies of shame or guilt or any of those energies that might be pushed down into their system that was protecting them. So as they go into these states of abstinence, the energies come back up in their system and it creates an essence of a lot of chaos, which is why they've avoided this in the past. If it came up and they tried to quickly fill in that hole, so to speak, is because it was helping to act as a band-aid on their wound. Okay. It was like a way of, maybe they didn't necessarily understand this at the time, but this was a big part of what was occurring in this avoidant energy. Okay. And bear with me because this is a pretty deep topic for the masculine. So the energy that's coming through is a bit different. So as they're going through these processes and all of this energetic chaos comes up in their system and they're feeling unstable and uncertain, they may hit this time where they're unsure of what to do. Okay. And but this is the process of where that dark night of the soul transformation can really step up. And it reaches this point where there is nowhere else for them to turn, nowhere to distract or to, sort of avoid the wound that's needing to be addressed. And so they will start to go through that energetic and emotional purging process. And as that occurs and as they go through it in their own unique way, right? They will find within the silence a more, eventually get more stable within this process. They'll have a deeper understanding of themselves, of maybe why they made the decisions that they did, and hopefully bringing in a level of understanding and compassion for themselves, which is why I feel it's so important that we are holding that state of compassion for the masculines instead of mirroring those energies of shame and guilt and projecting that onto them, holding this space to allow them the space and grace to process through these very deep hurts and wounds that have been suppressed in their system And then we in our society see it played out in different ways and then have in turn judged them. Okay, so it feels very important to move into states of neutrality and compassion and allow them to move through their processes in a very gentle manner. Now, I also am aware that not every single masculine may experience this the way that I'm speaking about, but the specific masculines that have been coming through for me on this topic wanted me to come at it from this approach to bring this awareness, because in my Patreon video today, it came through that there's also a lot of masculines who have frozen and dissociated from some of these traumas so deeply, they may not even actually remember these energies or instances, but they're living in their system. And it can be from their own experiences, but also from the ancestral lines, which is also bringing me back to other lives and even his connection to his divine counterpart, sacred divine feminine partnership. Okay, because as many of you know, or have experienced, if you've come into contact or communication or relationship with your divine counterpart and you've experienced the love bubble phase and then the collapse of that into a form of physical world separation, and you felt the masculine go silent or experienced the withdrawal of the energy or the running or the chasing, the part of the masculine is also going through healing the core separation wound being highly activated. And oftentimes the masculine is experiencing loving emotions for the feminine that he has never felt or hasn't felt in many centuries or lifetimes. And it's a new experience for him, which is very beautiful and allows him to open up. But then it also brings with it, as time goes on, as you know, through that love bubble phase, as it brings up the trauma and brings up the different topics, it also activates again back to that core separation wound. And the masculine collectives also experienced being ripped from his sacred feminine without understanding why, feeling that abstinence, oftentimes feeling or experiencing her being taken away and him being in a state of hostage where he's unable to protect her. He's unable to save her. And that created a tremendous amount of guilt and shame within the masculine system as well. And in some of those scenarios, I've seen, like when we talk about the Atlantis Lemurian separations or Avalon, or back to those ancient timelines where these separation wounds occurred, however that resonates for you, the masculines were ripped away and held and watched, oftentimes the feminines taken away. And actually, I'm feeling quite a bit of sadness with this. A lot of feeling of just hopelessness and helplessness, being hostage and unable to care for his counterpart. And that was really literally very torturous for the masculines to experience. And they carry the resonance of that memory within them. So when they're in this connection with their counterpart and their feminine, and they might be experiencing a misunderstanding or some of the chaotic energies, and they may shut down or pull back or run away. This is in part because all of that emotion, all of that wounding, all of that experience comes rushing back. And those masculines at that time, often as the feminines were led away and used in experimentation, I've also been shown that the masculines were as well. And the masculines were, because of their anatomy and because of the experience and where the counterparts were separated, many of the masculines were actually guided to or led to or enticed by other feminines into that way of getting their seed and experimenting with their DNA versus, like where the feminines were being used to birth experiments, the masculines were actually just being used to extract their seed. And this was done oftentimes by other feminines being used to extract that. Okay. So if you can kind of, pick up what I'm putting down, this is where that original energy of other feminine essences coming within the counterparts was seeded way back to the beginning of the core separation wound. And so as the masculines are healing or going through their process of their initiation, as they're stepping into their conscious creatorship, these are the type of topics that are coming up. And they're in a space where they're learning how to thaw out those energies and work with them. And oftentimes, unfortunately, they really haven't had anyone to speak to, where women oftentimes do have friends or other women that they can safely talk to about sexual abuses or experiences. The masculines have not necessarily, in most cases, had a safe space to do that. Okay, which is also why we are doing that here on Harmonious Hearts. Okay, loves, and over on my Patreon in even a smaller, safer container. But as the masculines are going through this process and they're dealing with the different layers of the distortion or the misunderstanding or the abuse or the trauma or the shame or the guilt that's in their system from this life, from the ancestral lines, from other lives, and all the way back to the core wound, separation wound, that's quite a bit to come up in the system. And any of you who have experienced these processes understand how much more intense it is when you're first working in those initial root and sacral chakra energies, because this is where we're guided to embody and stabilize our energy. So, where the masculines are really wanting to feel safe and stable, right? Now, mind you, this is the masculine's purpose, right? To provide, to protect, to bring safety and stability. And back at that core wound, that energy was ripped away from him. And then he was in a position where he felt powerless to feel safe and stable and to provide that protection for the ones that he loves. So, when this all gets opened up, it rocks him to the core of his purpose, of his function, of everything that he's been taught he is meant to be throughout lifetimes. And that is very, very intense. And there is this energy of instability and chaos because this is where the masculines have not been embodied into their own essence, because this is where the wounds have been frozen and shut down and dissociated from because it was too painful to address. These are the types of things that the masculines are moving into and working through and learning how to embody their true energy back into their lower chakras as well. So, yes, they are in operating in those lower chakras, but these are very intense pockets that they may not have engaged in centuries, and their ancestors were not embodied into these energies either, and so they are learning how to work with a very intense pocket, which is why in many cases it's been beneficial for the feminines to work through this process and stabilize first so that the masculine and the energetics can feel a deeper sense of safety and stability, and then have the capacity to address his own traumas, his own guilt, and his own processes with these very deep and powerful energies. Now, remember, you might say, well, like, this is so intense, and humans and the twin flames and divine counterparts, especially, have been targeted in these areas because it is where we hold our conscious creatorship energies. It is where we embody into our capacity to build worlds, to create lives, right? And to really tap into our essence. And it's an important topic because, as you know, every one of us has been born out of sexual energies in most cases, right? And so it is not something for us to be shameful around. It's something for us to learn how to embrace and to be able to unravel and dissolve and release any of the blame and the shame and the guilt and hold compassion around these topics because they have been suppressed for centuries, my loves. So when the masculines are facing these energies and when they are at this point, in some cases, it may be a very potent and vulnerable time. And I think that this is also being addressed because it is a very big topic that we are seeing on the world stage. And we're witnessing it here right now at this time in the States on a very large level. And so this is not just something that the counterparts are going through, but it is a topic that is being addressed on a planetary stage as we're moving through our ascension processes. So I do believe and have seen and witnessed and had conversations that the masculines do go through their own time of abstinence and healing the sexual energies. And it's going to look, feel, sense, and probably be different than the feminine's experience as it's meant to, but there is that time of mirroring where he will also be in the energetic preparation to embody into his true essence, to allow his original energies to be restored and to embody more deeply into what and who he has meant to embody into and to more deeply prepare for his own embodied inner union and sacred union energies on this planet. And I'm very honored to bring through this energy and this message as we're moving into these next steps and stages, because the divine sacred masculine collectives are moving into a very deep energy of healing around these energies, around these topics, and will be in the coming weeks, months, and years. So thank you so much for being here. I hope this was helpful, bringing in some deeper states of understanding. And I also feel like, of course, we could go more deeply into this. So if you have questions, you're welcome to drop them in the comments. Connor and I are going to be coming on and doing more conversations to bring more understanding and camaraderie to the divine feminine and divine masculine experiences with all of these topics. And so I know that many of you watched that video and were excited to see an embodied masculine that's willing to come forward and talk about some topics that so many of us have been wondering about. So I will drop that conversation in the pinned comment along with any of my information for one-on-one sessions in case any of you would like to work more deeply around these topics. And of course, if there are any sacred masculines present here who would like some support just to talk about these topics or to receive some energetic support on unraveling and dissolving any of those traumas or topics like this that we're talking about, please feel free to connect one-on-one with me if you feel guided. And again, thank you all so much for being here. Thank you for your patience and your presence with this. I'm sending you all so much love and gratitude for your willingness to have these conversations and your openness to be compassionate for the masculines and for humanity. All right, my loves, I'll see you soon. Love you. Bye.